some of the basic time prints. We have a long history, as I said, and we were a very old confederacy when our brothers from across the water first landed just 500 years ago. 500 years is just a tick in a clock of time, not long ago. But a lot has taken place during those 500 years. It changed what the world looks like. But in those times, and the basic foundation of the United States government is based upon the Haudenosaunee Confederation. And it's little known that the interaction of our leaders and our people for at least the past 400 years has been very directly in contact with our brothers from across the water. And then the discussion about men and women and how this was addressed by the peacemaker over 1,600 years ago. He said that we have equal work, that we have to work together, and that he said the earth is female, and therefore the women are in charge of the earth and water. Water's life. Men in charge of fire. And so he laid down the rules and laws of the Confederacy, and he said, we will follow the women's side. So 1,600 years ago, we were what you call a matrilineal society. Something that I see you're still struggling to come equal with today. Just amazing. But back then he understood, and he said that the earth is female, and therefore the women are in charge of the earth and water. And the men, as I said before, are in charge of fire. And so the foundation then of governance was split evenly when he set up the system of the Confederation. And so when a child is born, carries the title of the mother and her clan and her nation. That's a profound political and spiritual observation, understanding, recognizing. During the course of my life, I've done research to learn, because much like all of you, when I first started out, I didn't really know a lot. I had to study and find out about things and so forth. But Aristotle, this great philosopher, made an observation. He said that only men have souls, the women do not. That's a profound statement that set the direction of human life for a long time after. Can you imagine some human being just declaring that women do not have souls? How many of you know that? Is there to me? And I had to learn that. It's there, it's in the history, but you have to learn it. So that's why you've had such a hard time now talking to the women here. That's why you've been crucified, and they've called you witches and been burned, and terrible, terrible history. Chattel, you belong to people, they owned you. That comes from Aristotle, a great philosopher. Women do not have souls. Amazing. That's your first lesson. That's your first lesson today. But it's a profound lesson because what it is, it's set the standards of life. And Christian doctrine of discovery, 1493. Pope Alexander VI stated, if there are no Christian nations in these new lands you have discovered, I declare those lands to be empty. Terra nullius in old Roman law. Further, if there are people there and they are not Christians, they do not have a right of title to land. They have only the right of occupancy. That's 1 year after the so-called discovery of the Western Hemisphere. A statement by an individual in Rome that put us into a situation that still goes on today. We're now 500 years later, and we're still under that oppression. But this is what you're not told. So democracy then established, and it was pretty much followed by all the nations across and up and down these hemispheres, North Central, what you call South America now, pretty much the same. All the different histories and so forth, but foundational, we believed, a very strong belief in the afterlife. We have a very strong belief in the Creator. And they called us, they said they worship animals, these people. But again, this was a Christian perspective. Everything they looked at was in their perspective. They didn't have our broader perspective. They didn't understand that. Or did they want to? So the hegemony of Christianity has been around the world. And we are experiencing a lot of most of the current events today are related to that. And so the doctrine of discovery, Pope Alexander VI, they have only the right of occupancy. What is the right of occupancy? Well, it's the same right as a deer or a rabbit or a fish in the water or a bird in the sky, but not a title to land. In the land claim that the Oneida Nation put forward, and it wound up in front of the Supreme Court in 2005. And the position was reiterated again by one of the Chief Justices, Ginsburg. In 2005, she said, the doctrine of discovery prevails, 1493. That's 16 years ago. So you think that's whole history? there it was, 15 years ago. I became a teacher just by happenstance. After I had left New York and I came back to Onondaga to request someone in the clan mothers and asked me to take a position with the council of chiefs. She said, we need your help. And I left, I would say, the beginnings of a career in New York. And I came back and it's 1965. And I learned a lot since that time. A lot of the things that I'm telling you, I learned after. But it is out there, it is in the books. And I know it's in the archives of the Congress of the United States. They have all that history. Sometimes in triplicate, sometimes quadruple, and even 5 times. And so the history and the roots of democracy come from here, the Haudenosaunee, what you know as democracy, but which was rampant across North, Central, and South America. Everybody was free. Everybody. We understood that. We understood the importance of also being different. Because the more different your children are, when it comes to serious times, you're going to be looking for different thoughts and different opinions. And if you teach your children all the same thing, you're going to get the same answer back. So the children should be independent and free to be themselves and to learn. Just as each one of us here are individuals, we are all individuals, we all have our own histories, very important histories to us, each one of us. And I would tell you that if you took any one of you standing here and you did a history of that person, you would find it very, very interesting and very complex. Each one different, each one important. So then, the idea of democracy, the idea of equality between men and women. 1,600 years ago, we established that. And the Haudenosaunee is a matrilineal system because the earth is female. And it's the responsibility of the women. Water is life. And men in charge of fire. So, in Onondaga, in the Six Nations, when a female girl child is born, you have a landowner. How about that? And when one of us men, boys are born, go to the acrostic blur. Or someone who will speak for the nation. So our process of governance and democracy is very old. And the idea and understanding of the partnership of men and women working together for the family first. And it expands out to your clan and to your nation, and then to your combination of nations, but always the women equal, always the women, the other half of life. That's men. That's women. can make life together. That's your life. That's your partnership. And also your responsibility. And the peacemaker said something else then. He instructed our leaders and our people. And he said, when you sit in your council for the welfare of your nation, of your people, think not of yourself, nor of your family, nor even your generation. He said, make your decisions on behalf of those generations coming. Those faces looking up on the earth, each waiting their time, make your decisions on their behalf. 7 generations. That's long-term thinking. And he wasn't talking about the shortcut that you have today of a 20-year generation. That's not a generation. In our understanding, 20 years, still children, everybody, all children. 20 to 30, well, you're growing up some. Getting in a lot of trouble, or get married, even have children, but you're still growing up. 30 to 40, well, now you do have children, and you're busy, and your attention is looking down at those children, and you're teaching, and you're doing your best, but you're still learning. 30 to 40, 40 maturity, finally maturity at 40. As you look about, you see the men's backs are wide. 40-year-old man, better not fuss with him. Better not fuss with, don't fuss with that guy. He's a man. Mature. Women, the same. And they become leaders of your community. You just look about, you'll see that. And then 50. Half your life now. And you've learned something, but you're not in your prime. And you're 50 and 60, those are the leaders that you see around the world. Travel everywhere. They got the energy, they have some knowledge, but they're still learning. And it goes on. 60 to 70. And 70 to 80, if you want to talk to them, you better go see them. They're not going to be around all. They're not everywhere at that time. And 80 on, they're back again to 20. And some people even then turn back to children. You start the cycle again. I'll give you some background as to who you are and where you stand. You probably don't know that. Just a little advice, a little perspective. Take it for what it's worth. But democracy, what is it? We never had that word here. We don't have a word for that. I talked to my eldest grandmother, who was a real great leader and had great insight. And she said, well, she said, women are in charge. And she said that it's equal. Your work is equal. Your men and women work together for common cause. And she said, must be respectful. So I've learned over the period of years that there's a couple of basic rules that prevail for peace. And the first one that I see is respect. Respect is a law. It's not an option. It's a rule of law with Native people. There was so much protocol to our life before our brothers from the water came across, changed everything. One of the basic protocols was respect. If you have respect for life, for people, for everything that lives, it's a big move towards peace. Respect. It's a law. And if you do that and you practice that, you yourself will get respect. It comes back. And the other one is to be thankful. Be thankful always for what you have. And we have great ceremonies we've made to be thankful. And the Christian leaders used to say, these Indians, they just like to sing and dance all the time. And they like to meet, and they meet, and they meet all the time. And it's nonsense, they said. They had no understanding. They were limited by Christian doctrine for the whole rest of the world. Because this was going on everywhere, all over. And you should have this perspective. You should have this yourself. And you should study it, and you should reach out and find out things for yourself. Because we are at a time of crisis now. Very serious times. It's questionable in my mind whether we will survive as a species. I watch, and I've traveled in the course of running for the nation. That's all I've ever been, is a runner for the nation. And a lot of the messages that I carry is not my message, it's from the nation. I'm just a runner. But the advantage I had that our people realized was I had the teachings of our brother. I went to a university, I could speak his language much better than I speak my own. I understood what he was saying. If you work in an advertising company like I did in New York City, I know a lot about you, know all about you, and we're going to sell you stuff. And it goes on. And a really in-depth study goes on in the business world about you, and what you like and what you don't like. But it all depends on commerce. And so, using commerce as the basis of your development brought us to a very bad place now. There's something that occurred in my lifetime, in your lifetime, our lifetime, that most people aren't aware of. But over the period, and because I've had to learn and research and do all this stuff to get a better understanding, perspective, can anybody here tell me, in 1950, what the population of the world was? I mean, you know, give or take, roughly. How much? I'm hardly hearing, so what did he say?
2 billion.
Yeah, a little bit more, 2.5, stuff like that. 1950. Right. And it took hundreds of thousands of years to get to that number. 1950. Who can tell me what the population of the world is now, today. Yes, how much?
5 billion.
I didn't hear that.
You said 5 billion.
7.8, probably 9 today. Do the math on that one. How do you go from 250 billion years in my lifetime and come to almost 8 billion today, when it took hundreds of thousands of years to get to 2.5? That's 7.8 billion people that need water, that need land, that need food, they need protection, they need a society, they need care and feeding. That's what you're looking at today. Soon to be 8 billion. And is the water adjudicated fairly around the world? No. The Mideast has almost no water. I don't know what they're going to do. And we've contaminated water. India, 1.3 billion people. And their rivers are sewers. They're sewers. And the rivers around the world are sewers. Polluted. Your life-giving force. You need the water. Water's life. It's not adjudicated fairly. So, what are we to do? How are we going to meet this crisis of humanity? Here in America, less than 1% of the population owns 70% of the wealth of the nation. And do the math on that one. And I can tell you, absolutely, that's not one of us standing here. We're not that less than 1%. Also, that's not democracy. That's not democratic. What are you going to do about that? How are you going to address that? Equity, Peacemaker said. Be fair to the people. Be fair to the people. Equity. First principle of the Haudenosaunee is peace. And I can tell you that peace is not the absence of war. Real peace is peace. We live in serious times. What is the #1 economy of the world today? Can anybody tell me that? The #1 economy of the world today. Well, I can tell you. It's weapons of war. Billions and billions of dollars are put into warships, planes, submarines. Those billions of dollars could be gone to the people, could be for roads, could be houses, could be for food, it could be for equity, it could be that everybody has something. No, that's not what's out there. War. the biggest commerce in the world today. What's the second one? What's the second biggest commerce in the world? From my perspective and understanding, it's the sale of drugs. How's that for a 1-2 punch, as they say in the boxing world? The left hook and the right cross. And who is it that's getting hit? That's us. The ones here, standing here today. You're going to take that punch. 1-2. War and drugs. Economy of the world. If we are to survive as a species, that can't be. That cannot be. And common people have a voice, and they do rise on occasions. After things get so oppressive, there's nothing left for them to do but rise in self-defense. And I don't think we should wait for that. Time is slow now. Time is running out. The ice is melting. 21 years ago, I made an announcement at the UN on behalf of the indigenous people. And my message was, the ice is melting. 21 years ago. I was asked to address the UN. I have on many occasions. But on 2014, there was a major event, and they asked me to make an address to the General Assembly. And I was busy writing, trying to make this big statement and meet the issues of the times. 2014 is not that long ago. And then I said, well, you know, why should I do that? I'll just use the same speech I gave in 2000. And I did. Did the very same speech. And all the people sitting there, the representatives of the world, were agreeing. They were wisely shaking their head. Yes, they're agreeing with me. And then I said to them, you know, I gave you this speech 14 years ago. Same speech, nothing changed. Caught him 10 feet off first speech, so to speak. But I made a point. Well, here we are now. 7 years later, hasn't changed. Got worse. So, we have to speak up, we have to be more active. Your voice matters. You, when you think of your family, when you think of the future, see how it is that you can help. Our leadership has been almost excommunicated. It's corporations that run this earth now. Corporations and corporate power. They don't want to hear this message because it's going to challenge their take-home pay. So, it's a hard lesson, folks, but here we are. And I'm concerned. I have 2 great-granddaughters. One is 3 and the other is 6. And I think about them, and I think about that 7th generation, what it is that we're handing those children and those people. And that's, your perspective has to rise above yourself, or your generation, or 7 generations. Those were wise words, wise instructions 1,600 years ago. They reverberate now more than ever. So my message to you is that Native people can't do it. We've been slaughtered, we've been killed. 16 million people here in North America killed. It's not in your history book either, but it is in our history. It's there. You have to conquer that. We all do. We're all a family. Whether we're black, whether we're white, whether we're red or yellow or all the colors of mankind, we are a family. We can change blood. That ought to tell you something. When you need a transfusion, you're not going to ask, where did that blood come from? You're going to be very thankful that it's there. We're a family, and we better start acting like one. All equal. I'm not going to get into the spiritual side of Haudenosaunee or Native people, but only to tell you that it's very, very strong. And that we just recently celebrated in a very abbreviated form our harvest. And I'm glad to see that America at least puts up one day a year to be thankful. It's a good idea. But we, Haudenosaunee, every day, 20 times during the day, be thankful. Work for that. Work for the common good. Work for the future. Grow up. Take the responsibility of adults like you're supposed to. Act like an adult. Put aside your toys. Face the reality of the time. It's not over. So I'll close with the instructions of my very contemporary philosopher that I listen to, and I get, I don't know what you call it, makes me laugh a lot sometimes. An interesting person, interesting fellow. Certainly broad perspective. So I'll close with his statement. And he's made many statements. He said, when you come to the fork in the road, take it. Okay. And he said, well, it ain't over till it's over. And that's the one that I'm following now. You know who that philosopher is? It's Yogi Berra, Yankee. He was a funny guy, but he had a perspective. And you go back. But I like that one. It ain't over till it's over. And that's where I'm at. And that's where the Haudenosaunee is at. That's where all our people are at. We'll stand and fight. Peacemaker told us, never take hope from the people. You yourself understand. So, with that, I wish us all good luck. I give my appreciation and thanks to all the artists here out there. Amazing work, just amazing work. And to all of you who took the time, go on down and share a moment with Oren Lyons.